What's going on, everybody? This is Cody, your home theater hobbyist, and today I'm going to be comparing a bookshelf speaker to a floor standing speaker. Now, typically I would not do a comparison between a bookshelf speaker and a floor standing speaker because I think of them as being for two different buyers because they're kind of two different types of speakers. The person that's looking for a floor standing speaker wants a larger speaker that can produce room filling sound and better bass than your typical bookshelf speaker, because maybe they're going for like a 2-channel audio setup, no subwoofer, or some sort of situation like that. Whereas your bookshelf speaker buyer may want a smaller cabinet because it looks better sometimes than a floor standing speaker, and they're planning to buy a subwoofer to go along with it, or maybe they're space constrained so they have to go with a smaller cabinet. So they're kind of two different types of buyers. But Q Acoustics came to me and asked if I wanted to review their newest bookshelf speaker, the 3030i, and I said yes. And this particular speaker has a 6.5-inch woofer in it, similar to the 6.5-inch woofers inside the 3050i floor standing speaker. So instantly I had the same questions you guys have. How do the two compare? How does the 3030i compare to the 3050i? How does it sound? Is the bass better? Is it deeper? Is it more detailed? What are the differences? Well, I'm going to talk about that in this video, but stay tuned to the end because I'm going to make my recommendations on which one I think you should buy depending on your situation. The 3030i has a 0.9-inch tweeter and a 6.5-inch woofer. It has a frequency response from 46 Hz to 30,000 Hz and a sensitivity of 88 dB. It is 13 inches tall, 7.9 inches wide, and 12.8 inches deep, and it weighs 13.6 pounds each. The 3030i costs $399 for the pair. The 3050i also features a 0.9-inch tweeter and dual 6.5-inch woofers. It has a frequency response from 44 Hz to 30,000 Hz and a sensitivity of 91 dB. It is 40.1 inches tall, 7.9 inches wide, and 12.2 inches deep, and each speaker weighs 39.2 pounds. The pair costs $839. So the 3030i and 3050i both come from Q Acoustic's 3000i lineup of speakers, which includes the floor standing 3050i, a 3090 CI center channel, 3 different bookshelf speakers, the 3030i being the largest, followed by the 3020i and the 3010i, and also a subwoofer, the 3060s, or you can now buy the QB12. And some of those I've reviewed, and so I'll put those links in the description below to those reviews. But because they all come from the same model line, they have a lot of similarities, including the internal bracing structure, the overall design of the package, and color schemes. You can purchase any of these speakers in carbon black, Arctic white, English walnut, or graphite gray. Now let me mention one thing. The surface finish covers the entire speaker. So if you take the grill off, you're going to see the same surface finish on the front, back, sides, and on the top and bottom of the speaker, which is nice continuity of design. And speaking of the back here you can see the surface finish of the English walnut. And in the center you have a port there. Now Q Acoustics does provide a port plug just in case you need it. So if your speaker is less than 7 inches from the wall, you want to put that port plug in so it can clean up your bass response. But if it's greater than 7 inches, you can pull it out, toss it in the box or somewhere else for safekeeping. Now, around each one of the speakers in the line, Q Acoustics includes the name, power rating, impedance, type of speaker it is, and the serial number, just in case you ever need to call it in for service or something like that. On the bottom, they all include low profile binding posts, and those binding posts will take all major speaker types, including banana plugs, spade connections, and bare speaker wire. Now let's talk sound quality. To test the sound quality for these speakers, I use both movies and music to figure out what the differences are between the two. And I use my Denon AVR-X 4400H as my sound processor, and my Monoprice Monolith 7-channel amplifier as my amplification. Now, the Monolith can output up to 200 watts per channel, all channels driven, across the entire frequency range from 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz, which is plenty of power to drive these bad boys. But before I talk to you about my impressions, I'm going to play a couple of audio samples so you can hear how these sound. But you may want to make sure you put on a good pair of headphones or something like that, because these sound quality differences can be subtle.
Her beauty is unreal, just beat it out of here.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed those audio samples. Now I want to give you my impressions of these two speakers. And first, I'm going to start with the soundstage itself. Both speakers do a great job with their soundstage and their sound presentation. Overall, you get nice centered vocals where you expect them to be, and things move left and right just like you expect them to move. There's also a decent bit of depth to the presentation as well. So if you have objects in the background or in the foreground, something you can definitely tell there's a difference there. It's not huge depth, but you can definitely tell that the depth is there as well. They both sound nice and natural with vocals, which is something that I've always liked about Q Acoustic speakers, and so that's a definite plus. But one thing I did notice, especially when playing things back to back between the two of them, is the 3050i is definitely more efficient than the 3030i. And what I mean by that is when you're playing at a given volume level and you switch from the 3030i to the 3050i, the 3050i sounds louder. The 3050i has a sensitivity of 91 dB, while the 3030i has a sensitivity of 88 dB, and you can tell a difference when you're listening to them back to back. But I'm happy to report they both have a nice sound stage. Now let's move on and talk about the highs, mids, and lows between these two speakers, and we'll start with the highs. They both do a great job with the high presentation overall, and quite frankly, I'll just go ahead and tell you, they're basically identical in the highs. I wasn't able to tell the difference regardless of what I played between the two tweeters in these speakers, and they're probably the exact same tweeter is my guess. But I will say that in the high presentation, they have a nice, clean, crisp sound without being overly harsh. So if you were listening to violin music for hours, I don't think you'd be worn out or feeling fatigue after you listen to these, because they're high enough and they're clean enough, but they're not going to wear you out, which is a definite plus from a speaker. Moving on to the mid-range, they both have a nice prominent mid-range, especially the 3030i, but the 3050i doesn't slack off either. Now, the fact that the 3050i has a second driver there, you would assume that the mid-range would be more prominent in the 3050i than it is in the 3030i, and it is if you are really listening for it. But honestly, they blend quite well together in the mid-range. You get nice natural vocals and everything is nice and solid and prominent, and that's one of the things that I like. So now let's talk about bass. Now, they both play decent deep bass, better than, let's say, the other bookshelf speakers in the 3000i line, because they have the 6.5-inch driver. The 3030i goes down to about 46 Hertz published, and the 3050i goes down to, I think, 44 published, and they both will play 31.5 Hertz a bit, but they really kind of come in strong right around 40 Hertz, which kind of goes with the published specs of these speakers, so that's a definite good thing. They both play nice, deep, detailed bass, which is something I'm happy to say. But the fact that the 3050i has the dual drivers means that you can feel the bass a little bit more, and it goes just a little bit deeper than the 3030i, because you're moving twice as much air with the 3050i compared to the 3030i. And so that is the major standout between these two speakers. The bass is just a little bit better in the 3050i than it is in the 3030i. So overall, from a sound quality standpoint, these speakers are nearly identical. And I know it's kind of hard to say, are they really that identical? They're pretty close. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, they have common parts. Like, I'm assuming that the tweeters are exactly the same between these two, and you have the a nearly identical 6.5-inch woofer between these two. If they're not identical, I'm not really sure. But the other thing that they have going for them is that both of these speakers cabinets are nearly identical in depth and also width. Obviously the 3050i is taller because it's a floor standing speaker versus bookshelf, but the fact that you have cabinet dimensions that are pretty much the same along with the same basic layout up front means that a lot of things sound very, very similar. The only place that I was able to really notice it right off the bat that there was a difference, and that was in the bass presentation, because you have the dual drivers pushing more air, but otherwise the sound quality is very much the same between these two speakers. One other thing I should note here is both of these speakers match very well with the QB12 subwoofer from Q Acoustics. I have tried both of them out. I'm not going to add audio samples in here, but if you want to hear an audio sample of how really both of these would sound with a QB12, go check out the 3030i full review. I'll put a link in the description below. In there I have audio samples where you can hear it with and without, and the 3050i sounds pretty similar, so the QB12 definitely adds more depth and detail to the bass to both of these speakers. So now let's talk about my recommendations, and honestly, the fact that these sound so similar kind of makes the recommendation pretty simple, and it's simply this: if you have a subwoofer or are planning to get a subwoofer, go with the 3030i. But if you have no plans for a subwoofer and just don't have one, go with the 3050i. It's pretty much that simple. And if you're saying, well, the 3050i is a little bit too large for my room, then you can still go with the 3030i, because again, you get a little bit extra depth, a little bit of extra bass feeling, but the woofer in this is really good, and so it works out quite well. Now also, if you're thinking about upgrading, the advice is the same. If you have a subwoofer, go with the 3030i. But if you don't have a subwoofer and you don't mind having a floor standing speaker, go with the 3050i. And I know some people are like, well, that's kind of simple, and why would you end the video like that? But the reality is I'm happy because the 3030i is a good speaker. It's competing pretty well with its bigger brother in the 3050i. The only place where it kind of lacks is just in a little bit of depth of bass. But if you have a subwoofer, you don't have to worry about that. So the mid-range and highs sound very much the same between these two speakers, and that is a good thing. So this 3030i is a great speaker, and so is the 3050i. So if you want to purchase the 3030i, 3050i, or anything else from Q Acoustics, use those links in the description below. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. We'll talk to you next time.